With our next speaker, it's a question of persistence pays off. I've been trying to get Nick Hindle on our platform for a few years. He's here, delighted. Nick is Senior Vice President, Corporate Affairs and Northwest Division Strategy and Alignment for McDonald's, and within that title, it means that he's no stranger to Stockholm because the region includes Sweden. Nick, great to have you on the platform.
Good morning. My name is Nick Hindle, and I spend money on measurement and evaluation. That was better, easier for me than my first trip to Alcoholics Anonymous, so thank you for that generous response. I don't measure to evaluate performance of my teams or my agencies. I measure to inform strategy and guide tactics and execution. Today I'm going to share with you the value that we in McDonald's UK have extracted from measurement and evaluation, and then share a couple of personal thoughts at the end, which you may or may not thank me for. We learnt the value of measurement and evaluation when our business was under pressure. Back in the mid-2000s, the rest of the McDonald's world was doing incredibly well, but McDonald's UK was not. Our sales were down, our profits were down, our franchisees' cash flow was down, and there was a downward momentum on this performance. So why was this happening? And I think it is important for me to give you a little bit of background about why it was happening. This isn't literally why it was happening. It's a metaphor for the fact that we weren't really focusing on what was driving the core sales amongst our core customer groups within our business. We were flirting with many of the wrong products and services, and we'd taken our eyes off what really mattered to our customers. And we'd lost brand relevance. As you can see from this picture of one of our dining areas back in the mid-2000s, the world had moved on and McDonald's had not. We'd stopped investing in our restaurants and we were looking incredibly out of date. And the problem was that we did that at a time when competition was exploding around us, whether it was Asian, fusion, sushi, organic. It was everything but burgers and fries, and we were really looking out of touch with the trends that were in our marketplace. And we saw the world through our own eyes. You know, we're a big organization, we're a franchised organization. We have to create a lot of alignment in order to be effective. But the problem was that, you know, as sales dwindled and our world got tougher, we had really we'd become too arrogant and we'd become too blinkered, and we started to try and see the world as we wanted it to be rather than the reality of what it actually was. In short, we just weren't listening to our customers properly anymore, and that was costing us dearly. And it made us an easy target. It meant that when issues arose, we were an easy target for the media, for politicians, for NGOs, for concerned customers and consumers, pretty much the whole gamut. And childhood obesity created the perfect storm for those detractors, because it was a major public health issue, it was a major economic issue for governments, and it had children and poor people at its heart. They were the people that were most vulnerable. And we, McDonald's and McDonald's in the UK, became the poster child for this issue, which was front news day after day after day. My predecessor, Mike Love, did a piece of evaluation back in sort of 2003 to 2004, 2005, I think, over a 12-month period. And he identified that in Germany, France, and the UK, 80% of the coverage on obesity was happening in the UK. And actually, McDonald's UK was in about 80% of that coverage. So it really was quite a traumatic time for us. And the dominance of the negativity of this story was affecting our customers, particularly parents, making them feel guilty and making them change their behaviour. We did, of course, measure and evaluate all of the media coverage, everything that was being written and said about us. But in reality, that evaluation told us what we already knew. We were taking a hell of a beating in the press. So we gave the data to some different people who used it for econometric modelling as part of a wider piece of work on return on marketing spend. And it was these data-loving geeks who created a methodology which converted media coverage sentiment into units of advertising currency known as group rating points. And they used that to calculate a monetary impact on sales. And the figure they came up with was that over the 12-month period, the negative buzz around our brand had cost us the equivalent of a minus 6% impact on our sales. We're a big business in the UK. That is a lot of cheeseburgers. And it was this killer insight which helped us to make important strategic decisions about communications. It told us that media relations was going to be a crucial part of our turnaround. It told us we needed to reallocate resources to communications, but also to reallocate resources within communications. We needed greater support from the business to create things that were generally newsworthy and to enable us to tell our stories. And we also needed to use our own media channels and advertising to supplement channels for our PR messaging, because at a time that was so tough, it was unlikely that PR was going to be able to really cut through for us. And it was this insight that gave me and my teams and agencies the resources we needed to commit to building impactful communications strategy and campaigns. But it didn't tell us what to do. We needed to do further research to generate the insights and evidence that would guide us on who we needed to engage, what specifically we needed to do, and who should say if it was going to, and who needed to tell the story if it was going to be believed. Because in such an unforgiving environment, we had to make sure we were creating the right news for it to be heard and to be believed by our customers. It was this additional work that led us to the understanding that it was critical for us to build trust in our brand and really focus our strategies and our resources on trust building, and to do it predominantly with a core customer group, that group that we call Happy Meal Mums. And it led us to a number of actions. These actions were predominantly on our menu, whether it was about improving the nutritional content of our food, whether it was about improving the quality of our ingredients, but it also affected other areas that positively impact our customer experience. Measurement and evaluation continue to play its part for us in a number of different ways. It provided an important measure to the board with monthly, quarterly, and annual reporting into the board, because it enabled us to see progress before perhaps progress came through in sales, and it enabled us to have the confidence as a board to remain committed to our strategy and to our tactics. And performance has improved. We've now managed to have a consecutive 36 quarters of growth within the UK business. Media relations is a net positive contributor to short and long-term sales. Brand metrics have improved, and trust has more than doubled in our brand in the UK. And comms measurement and evaluation continues to be a key part of what we do, not least because of the growth in social media and the analytics available to us through digital. And we have to have a discussion internally about how we need to involve the allocation of our measurement and evaluation spend and resources. So, as a customer for 10 years, what is my experience and what conclusions have I drawn? Well, it's a pretty positive one, but it's led me to 4 thoughts. My first is that comms measurement and evaluation on its own is a luxury, even if you're using it to financially incentivize and reward your teams and your agencies. Secondly, I believe you have to join the dots between the work that you are doing and other work within the business if it's going to deliver genuine value. So, my third thought is, who actually is the right client at the client. And I can say to you, Stuart, that in our case, it's not the CMO. Yes, the CMO is an important stakeholder, but there are many other parts of an organisation that lay a claim to driving performance, whether it's the people function, whether it's the operational function, whether it's the finance function, whether it's the supply chain function. Everyone has a role in delivering that performance. I believe that in our organisation, the right client for you is the Vice President of Strategy and Insight. It's the Corporate Strategy Department that really should be on your client list. Because I believe that even in our business, there is a profound need to change how we work, change our focus, change our skills, change our structure in order to continue to thrive in this changing world. And my last point that is a question to you, and that's, do evaluation companies and PR agencies have all of the right skills and experience to make sure that your work is used to create strategy in my world? That's it from me. I think we should have time, Barry, for some questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Who has the first question for Stuart? At the back, please.
Hi, I'm Mo Farley at Microsoft, and I do strategy and planning corporate. I loved your story. When you talked a little bit about how you got to the insight, I'd love a little commentary, if you don't mind, around internally. Like, how did you bring that group together? And was it already organized that way at McDonald's, or was there also some energy because of the position that you were in to kind of get to that point where you were driving those insights?
There was a huge amount of energy in order to create the right solutions moving forward. You know, like many businesses that hit troubles, we spent a couple of years trying to get ourselves out of that by driving sales-generating activity. Some of that worked, some of it didn't. A colleague of mine in Germany refers to it as the spray and pray time of the UK business, which I thought was a lovely way of putting it. So it already made a lot of mistakes, and anybody who works in an international organisation, in an operating division of an international organisation, knows that, you know, when things start to go bad, you tend to get a lot of help from the centre. So, you know, we had a lot of PowerPoint presentations, we had a lot of meetings when we were trying to talk about what we were going to do about it, rather than spending time thinking about, do we really understand the root causes of this? In terms of the people that we brought together, it was a collective approach between the UK board, so bringing the power and the insight from the different parts of the organisation. It was very much driven at the time by the CEO, by the CMO, by the VP of Strategy and Insight, and by myself. We listened a lot to some outside advice, and with the help of colleagues in the US, we brought in some new thinking into the organisation, and we started to explore what the world of politics and the insight into political campaigning and polling could bring to us, which was actually quite an important insight for us when we started to look at things through a completely different lens. So it was the board that brought it together with some useful advice and insight from other people. I don't think we would have done this if there had not been the burning platform of financial performance. I think that we would have carried on merrily in our own way, in our sort of field of dreams mentality to our business, which was open the doors and they will come. And it really did take that severe jolt and huge loss of value in order to make us think about a different direction. Now that we've been on such a long period of turnaround and then growth, it's really interesting for me to look at how a business behaves, or how an organisation behaves, and how a leadership team behaves in terms of its appetite for change. Because my own opinion is that you go from being very focused on promoting growth to being very focused on protecting the growth that you have achieved, because it becomes part of your legacy as a leadership team. I think that has slowed down I think that has diminished our appetite for change as a leadership team. And so we're spending quite a lot of time at the moment forcing ourselves out of our comfort zone to challenge ourselves about how we have to change, what we have to do differently in order to start laying down the foundations for the next phase of growth.
Thank you. A question over here, please.
Thomas Stöckler from LexisNexis. I have a somewhat similar question. You were talking about joining the dots earlier. Over the time of your journey, when we take the dots as paid, earned, shared, and owned media that you need to look at overall, how did working on this big problem and getting data evidence and learning more over time, how did that affect the focus on those 4 areas, and how did it affect resource allocation over time?
Right, I'll try and reprise that. I'm not sure I'm going to. It's quite an elongated and complicated question, so forgive me if I don't answer it as well as I should. What I would say first of all is that because we as a leadership team knew that the media, that the negative buzz around the brand was causing us a problem, but it was very difficult for us to argue to make strategic decisions about the reallocation of financial and human resources without hard data. So you know better than I that you cut through in as an organisation when you use the language of business rather than the language of communications and marketing. So having clarity around that, having that quantified was critically important. I don't actually know if in reality it was a -6% impact or not. What I do know is the fact that we had a number that we all agreed upon was actually the vital thing that moved us forward. In terms of allocation of resources, it was actually quite a profound moment for us because we have over 1,200 restaurants in the UK. They are a media channel. We have a fleet of trucks, which is a media channel. We have people who are a media channel. It was about how can we use all of those to get the right messages to deliver to our customers, but also that we don't look too defensive and too panicky, so we all of a sudden come about this one thing. In terms of allocation of resources within my own organisation, within my own part of the organisation, we had a significant lift in financial budgets. We had a lift in headcount, which was unusual at a time when the business was performing poorly. But I allocated more of my resources into the field because I knew that from a media point of view that I was going to get the best traction within the local and regional media within the country rather than within the national media. So I reallocated resources there, and I reallocated resources to supporting our franchisees who became part of it. And I created programs that put McDonald's people, not comms people or leadership, through training programs on media and stakeholder engagement so that they could become part of our organisation as well. And I worked very closely with an organisation who many of you, I'm sure if not all of you know, called PSB, who did a lot of work with us on polling our customer base to understand what we already did that would shift their perception positively about us and their behaviour, and the things that we could do that would shift our behaviour about their perceptions and their behaviour. Once we'd identified those things, we were able to make the investments in things like organic milk, free-range eggs, freedom food pork, nutritional changes to the menu. So that was customer-led and customer-validated.
Thank you. One last question at the back. A short question, please.
Yeah, very short. Thank you, Nick, for your presentation. I'm Carlos. I represent Buo. It's a media analysis company in Colombia and South America. And now you were talking about allocating the resources. I was wondering how much as a percentage of those resources do you spend in media measurement and how much is going to PR? So if you have like 100, how much of those 100 will go to media evaluation, how much will go to PR?
In pure numbers terms, we spend between 5 and 10% on evaluation, but we spend a lot more on understanding trust. We spend a lot more on customer research, and we spend a lot more, and we spend other amounts of money on different types of stakeholder research, and that thankfully sits within the corporate strategy team's budget area. That is probably of higher value. I spend more of my time, and I get my looking at data around customer and stakeholder trust than I do looking at the measurement and evaluation reports that come out of our providers in that area. I'm glad to say my team spend a lot of time looking at the reports that come out of the media side. But the fact for us, the killer insight for us was that because of the type of brand that we are, and because of the type of environment that we were in the UK, media relations had to be an important part of us changing opinions around the brand. It might not have been media relations, it might have been something else. And that's why I say you've got to join the dots. The comms team, the PR agencies were fortunate in this example that it was media relations. And that's why I think that I think Stuart is right in his direction of travel, which is that you've got to broaden out your relationships and your engagement. I think the CMO is massively important and a massively important stakeholder. But I do believe you've got to understand what the requirements are of the people who sit around that executive table who lead different functions. A killer area for us is our people. You know, we employ over 100,000 people in the UK. If they don't believe in what we're doing, if they don't know about what we're doing, they're not going to be able to deliver an improved experience to our customers. So, you know, Chief People Officer will tell me that he or she is as important as the CMO. And yeah, I'm a PR person. I believe everybody and then get on and do with what I want to do. So, you know, that's just the way it is.
We're going to have to leave it there. The questions indicate the amount of interest, Nick. Thank you for
I've still got a minute and 5 seconds on my clock, Barry.
No, because I've got to thank you properly first.
Oh, Stuart overran, did he? So.
Nick made a particular effort to, again, like many other speakers, to protect this speaker spot here, and we thank him for that. He has got to fly back to London later, so if there are any more questions, and I suspect there will be, please surround him at the coffee break, and that will pretty much take you up to your time.
I'll go and get my badge.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.